In this video, we're going to look at angle relationships. But there's a couple things that I want to talk about before we get into the relationships to make sure you understand how to tell the difference between interior, exterior, and when I say transversal, what it actually means. So let's take a look real quick. First of all, anytime that you have something like this, notice we have two lines. And in some cases, they'll be parallel and they'll have a symbol on them that looks like an arrow. But in this case, I didn't put any symbols because they may not be parallel. However, I want you to know that anytime you see two lines like this, we're going to call that the interior. Why? Because we're inside of the two lines. And outside of the lines, like out here, we're going to call this the exterior. Because we are outside of the lines. And this is important to know that this is the interior, and outside of it, in other words, above and below, are exterior, because we're going to have interior and exterior angles. Now, one more thing is you heard me say the word transversal. These green lines that I drew in my pen, they are a transversal. So it's just a line that cuts through two other lines. So that's a transversal, and I'm going to go ahead and label this one right here transversal. Now keep in mind, once again, everything that you see in between these two black lines is interior. So this is all interior. And everything you see above the line on the outside is an exterior. Same thing here. This is all exterior area. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this lesson. Now let's go ahead and look at our first set of angles that we're going to have. Our first set of angle we're going to talk about are going to be our alternate exterior angles. The reason they're exterior is notice they're on the outside of the two black lines. Now I'm first just going to be looking at one transversal. So in regards to transversal L, right, we could have alternate exterior angles. And what that means is that there's an angle on each side of the transversal. For instance, there's an angle relationship between this angle 1 and I'll call this angle 2. So I can just write over here, I'm going to put angle 1 and angle 2 are alternate exterior angles. So on some of your lessons, I'm seeing that you are being asked to find a set of alternate exterior angles. So this is what you would use as your set. In relation to transversal L, those are alternate exterior. Now, these ones that I have in pink are also alternate exterior. So let's say that this is angle 3 and 4. So on this particular transversal, we also have angles 3 and angle 4. And once again, this is only for transversal L. We could also find those same angles here. We could go over to M and say that, for instance, this angle and this angle, right, these two that are alternate, that are both outside, are alternate exterior. And we could say that this angle here and this angle here are also alternate exterior in relation to M, right, transversal M. So hopefully this kind of clarifies what alternate exterior angles are. And now let's go ahead and move to our next image. So now we're going to look at what we call alternate interior. So notice these are on the outsides of the two lines and on either side of the transversal. The same thing goes right here, except for they're on the inside. So they're still on either side of the transversal. That's what I mean by same thing. But they're not outside. So we call them interior angles. Now, for instance, I'm going to go ahead and just number them. Let's say here, let's call this angle 5 and angle 6. They are alternate interior angles because they're inside of these two black lines and they're on either side of the transversal. So I'm going to write right here angle 5 and angle 6. We could also say that the ones that I highlighted in pink, those are also alternate interior angles. So for instance, let's call them 7 and 8. So angle 7 and angle 8. are alternate interior angles. Now we could also go to this transversal M, and if we were to label these angles, we could say that this angle right here and this angle right here are alternate interior. And we could say that this angle here and this angle here are alternate interior, right? Because they're on opposite sides of the transversal and they are within these two black lines. So that's alternate interior, alternate exterior. And now let's go ahead and move up to a couple more angles that we got to talk about. Next, we're going to talk about corresponding angles. Now, corresponding angles, I like to label them as top left, bottom right, things like that, because corresponding just means that they're in the same relative location. So I'm just going to give you an example. On this first one here, right, I want you to notice, let's say this is angle, let's see, we stopped with 8. I'm going to call this angle 9. So let's say this is angle 9. And I want you to notice that angle 9 is on the top left. And when I say top left, I mean that it's above the black line and it's to the left of the transversal L. So if I find another angle that's to the left of L and on top of a black line, then that's going to be a corresponding angle. So let's say that angle 10 right here. This is a corresponding angle. Why? Because it's also on top of a black line and to the left of this green transversal. So I'm going to go ahead and put those angles on there. So we'll do angle 9 and angle 10 are corresponding because they have the same relative location, top left and top left. So let's go over here to transversal M and look at it. If I wanted to find corresponding angles here, I could say that angles 11 and angle 12 are going to be corresponding. Why? Because this is on the bottom of the black line and to the left of the transversal, and 12 in regard to transversal M is also going to be at the bottom left. So they're in the same relative location, therefore angle 11 and angle 12 are corresponding. Now, if I wanted to find corresponding angles on this right side angle here, I could go ahead and say that angle 13 and 14 are going to be corresponding. And the reason would be because angle 13 is on the bottom right side, which means it's below the black line and to the right of the transversal M. And number 14, angle 14, is also on the bottom right. In other words, it's below the black line and it's to the right of this transversal M. So angle 14. Now we could go ahead and list all of them. I'm not going to list all of them, but I'm just giving you multiple examples. So corresponding angles, they just have to be in the same relative position in relation to lines that are drawn and a transversal that cuts through it. So now let's go to vertical angles. What are vertical angles? Well, when we talk about vertical angles, so we'll call this angle 15 and angle 16. They're angles that oppose each other when two lines cross. So 15 and 16 are vertical angles. So angle 15 and angle 16 are vertical angles. I could also go down here to the bottom and say, let's call this one angle 17 and call this angle 18. Once again, they are vertical angles. So we could do angle 17 and angle 18. Now, if I wanted to add some angles, let's say that we called this one right here 19, and we called this one right here 20. They are vertical angles. They're opposite each other, and they share a vertice, right? In other words, if I put a dot where the two lines cross, they share it. So 19 and 20. Angle 19 and angle 20 are vertical angles. So that's all there is to it to finding vertical angles. Obviously, there's more on here, right? We have this one is vertical to this one, and this one to this one, this one to this one, and so on. But that should be just enough examples to get you started in understanding what a vertical angle is and how to locate it. Now let's go ahead. We're going to look at our final angle that we have here that we're going to talk about. We call same side interior angles. Now if we have a same side interior angle, one of the ways that we can tell is, first of all, they're interior, so they're in between two lines. And then they're on the same side of a transversal. My transversal on this side is L. So let's say that this is angle 21 and angle 22. They're on the same side of the transversal. In other words, they are both on the left side of the transversal. And they're on the interior of the two black lines. So we'll call that same side interior. So angle 21 and angle 22 are both same side interior. And there's more than one, right? There's another set over here on this side on the right. There's another set over here on the left. But I'm going to go ahead and label these right here, 23 and 24. And these are same side interior angles because they're on the same side of the transversal. They are both on the right side. And they're in the interior, right, in between the two black lines. So angle 23 and angle 24. So now you know every type of angle that you need to know for the work that you have in angle relationships.